Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Most Merciful. Abu Huraira quoted the Prophet ﷺ as saying, 7 will be shaded by Allah Almighty on a day when there will be no other shade besides His shade. A just ruler, a youth who grows up worshipping Allah, a man whose heart is attached to the mosques, 2 men who love each other for the sake of Allah. They meet on the basis of it and separate on the basis of it. A man who is invited by a woman of high position and beauty, and he replies, "Indeed, I fear Allah." A man who gives charity and hides it so much so that his left hand is unaware of what his right hand gave. A man who remembers Allah in private and his eyes become filled with tears. The first of the categories is that of the just ruler. As we said earlier, for him to be just, he must have a fear and a love of Allah. He must be conscious of Allah. And he must struggle against his desires. Because the justice is not only the external appearance of justice, because one may achieve that while being in oneself unjust, meaning that rulers may fool their subjects into thinking that there is justice in the society, but in fact they're unjust in secret. So the people are deceived. So when we speak about the just ruler, we're talking about one who is not only just in his rulings or in the appearance of justice, but that he himself, within himself, he is also just. And in that way, such a ruler will institute in his realm justice. There will be justice throughout his realm, throughout the land. And when the Prophet ﷺ describes the Mahdi, for example, who will come as one of the signs of the last day, and Prophet Isa alayhi salam, who will come as one of the signs of the last day, he describes them as filling the earth with justice after there being oppression and corruption throughout the land. So this is among the major characteristics of the righteous ruler. His justice covers everyone who he rules. He is not just for the powerful in the society, but for the weak, his justice doesn't reach them. And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ stressed this when he was approached by the family of a woman from the Makhzum tribe in Medina who had stolen. And of course the rule, she had stolen enough for her hand to be cut off. So they approached Usama ibn Zayd and asked him to intercede on the behalf of the woman with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. They chose Usama because they knew that he was particularly loved by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. He was the son of his former adopted son Zayd. When Usama spoke to the Prophet ﷺ on behalf of the woman, the Prophet ﷺ became extremely upset. And he gathered the people together. And he told them that what destroyed the people before, the generations that came before, was that when people applied the laws of the land, they would apply it to the poor, and the powerful would be excused. So he went on to say that if my own daughter Fatima stole, I would cut off her head. Making it very plain, very clear, that justice is for everybody. It is across the board. So the attitude that some Muslims take today, for example, where when dealing with other Muslims, they will be fair, etc., and just, but when dealing with non-Muslims, they will not be. This is not from Islam. For example, where a person, this is the issue of justice here, a person just in a store where he hasn't put prices on his goods. When a Muslim comes, he'll give them at one price, but when a non-Muslim comes, he will give them at a higher price. He will exploit the fact that they are non-Muslims and the fact, of course, that he hasn't put prices on his goods. And when such a person is spoken to, they will argue, well, the non-Muslim is going to hell and he doesn't really need the money. So if I can get extra money from him, it's okay. But no, this is not Islam. This is not Islam at all. In the Islamic way is to be just and fair, because when we talk about justice, we're talking really ultimately about fairness, to be fair with everybody. This is Islam. This justice is manifest in all aspects of our lives, even within the family itself. As the Prophet ﷺ had stressed the importance of justice and fairness between a man and his wives, for example. That a man who is unfair to one of his wives, he denies her her rights, and he focuses only on one wife, leaving the other hanging, that he will come before Allah on the Day of Judgment with half of his body dragging on the ground, as a symbol of humiliation and degradation for his injustice. So Islam calls to justice in all of its teachings, and the ruler who is just, such a person is in a special category. We said he's in a special category because he has the ultimate decision. It is much easier for judges and all those under him to be just because he looks over them. He is in a position of authority over them. He can punish them if they go astray or they do not follow the principles, etc. But there's no one over him from the people of this world. Only Allah is over him as the ultimate ruler. So for him to maintain justice is, of course, extremely difficult. And this is why Allah has put him in this special category. Of course, what comes with his establishment of justice is that he also repels oppression in the society. Oppression which harms the various members of society. He is in fact removing harm from their way. And he is then also implementing Allah's laws throughout the land, throughout the realm. So all of this is of great benefit to the society as a whole, that just ruler. We know the impact that a just ruler can have on the society. I mean, we have the example, for example, of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, who is sometimes referred to as the fifth of the righteous caliphs, who came after a rule which was like kingship. And the impact that he had on the society, though he only ruled for 2 years, was tremendous. So much good came out of his period, whether it was in the areas of education, where the hadiths were collected and compiled and authenticated, or it was in the area of economics, where he returned the Baytul Mal to the people and used the wealth for the benefit of the society and restricted himself and his family from any access to the wealth. I mean, all of these, the impact of a just ruler on the society as a whole is, it is of major importance. And as we said earlier, that the ruler, or the just ruler, though the position of being a ruler is restricted to males, this principle still applies to females in the places of their authority, within their homes, how the mother deals with her children. The issue of a just ruler will come into play, where Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, had instructed us to be just in the division and the giving of gifts in our families. For example, we don't give one child a gift and we don't give another. That we have to be just in our dealings with them. Though we may favor, though we may like one of our children more than the others, one pleases us more than the other, but we still cannot give to one and not give to the other. We have to maintain this justice before them. And the Prophet ﷺ, in other narrations, one found in Sahih Muslim and narrated by Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, he quoted the Prophet ﷺ as saying, the just ones, al-muqsitin, will be on podiums of light to the right of Ar-Rahman, Allah the most merciful, and both of his hands are right. Those who are just in their rulings and their families, and in what Allah has put them in authority over. That Allah will put them on a special podiums of light on the day of judgment, to the right hand of his throne. This is a special position, elevating them before the rest of creation. Also, Abu Huraira quoted the Prophet ﷺ as saying, there are three people whose du'as Allah will not reject. One who remembers Allah often, the oppressed, and the just imam. Again, a special category for those who are just in their rulings, leaders who are just. And of course, this because of the fact that there is such a great reward, because the trials are so great, because as a general principle in Islam, the greater the difficulty, the greater the trials, the greater the reward for those who are able to fulfill the requirements. And this, of course, doesn't mean that we put ourselves unnecessarily into difficulty simply to try to increase the reward. But no, just as a task is before us, the greater the task, the greater the reward. On the other hand, because of the significance of the ruler in terms of establishing justice throughout the society, that ruler, when he becomes corrupt, then his impact on the society is tremendous. Then the spread of corruption is far greater than it would be where there were normal citizens who were involved in corruption. As a result of that, we find in another narration, also narrated by Abu Huraira, in which he quoted the Prophet ﷺ as saying, there are four whom Allah Ta'ala is angry with. There are four groups of people whom Allah is angry with. The first is the trader who frequently swears by Allah. Everything he's trying to sell to people, he's swearing, Wallahi, this is the best. He's using the swearing by Allah to promote his goods. This hadith is in Sahih or in Sunan Ibn Majah and Al-Muwatta. It's authentic. And this is something which those of us involved in trade need to reflect on, because it's a very common practice. So such people, Allah is extremely angry with. Also, the proud pauper, a person who is in need, but he is so proud that he will not take what he needs from others. Now, of course, on one hand we have people who are shy to go and beg, and of course it's good. It's a good characteristic. But you have others who are proud in their poverty. For example, you'll find a person who is on the lower rungs of the society economically, etc., but he will, be proud to say, I am a sharif, I am from the Prophet's family. This becomes a big issue and makes him feel better than others, even though in reality he is poor and at the bottom rungs of the society. Humility, Islam promotes, whereas pride is considered a great evil. The third category is that of the adulterous old man. An old man, a man who has reached the end of his life, who by now should have recognized his indiscretions, earlier indiscretions, whatever, things he should be repenting from, trying to get himself closer to Allah, seek forgiveness from sins, but he's still involved in corruption and adultery. Adultery at that stage in life is something particularly evil. A young person, Allah didn't put in this category. here. Prophet ﷺ didn't mention this category because the young person, he's driven by massive desires, whereas the old person, desires are down. So there's no excuse. And then the last category is the sinful imam, the imam who is corrupt. These are hated by Allah. With that, dear viewers, we've come to the end of this segment.